It was close to 10:30 p.m. I was driving home after a late shift. I work for an ambulance company, so sometimes things run late depending on transfers. That night was one of those nights. The roads were mostly empty, just a long stretch of two-lane highway bordered by trees, not much light except for my headlights. I was about 15 minutes from home when I saw her, a woman, thin, standing dead center in the road, just outside the range of my brights. White dress, long hair, pale face. It was so sudden I didn't even think. I slammed on the brakes and my whole body jerked forward against the belt. My heart was in my throat. I swore I hit her, but when I looked up, she was gone. The road ahead was completely empty, nothing on either side. It was wide and open, no cars, no ditches, just tree line about 30 feet off. There was nowhere she could have gone that fast. I even got out of the car for a second, scanned the area with my phone light, called out. Nothing. I got back in and kept driving. I tried to convince myself it was a shadow or a reflection or something. Maybe I was tired and my brain glitched. But I knew what I saw. I saw her face. She had dark eyeliner. Her mouth looked open like she was either screaming or gasping. Her arms hung stiff at her sides. That part stuck with me, the way her arms didn't move. When I finally got home, I couldn't shake the feeling. I left the car running and sat there for a while, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face lit by my headlights. Empty. Waiting. A few nights later, I was driving the same road again, this time a little earlier in the evening. Nothing weird happened. But when I checked my rear view as I passed that same stretch, I swear I saw the white dress just standing there in the dark, slowly turning away. I don't drive that road at night anymore. When I was around 13, my cat would always sleep curled up next to me. Every night, like clockwork, she'd be on my bed before I even laid down. It was comforting, until that one night. I remember falling asleep like usual, but I woke up in my dream. Everything looked the same. Same room, same lighting, just slightly off. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and hit the power button. It lit up and unlocked without a code, which was weird. Then, for no reason, it opened straight to the front-facing camera. That's when I saw her. Behind me, in the reflection, standing just over my shoulder, was a pale woman. Her skin was grey, blotchy. Her mouth was wide open, like it was stuck in a silent scream. Then the sound hit, loud, high-pitched, unreal. She was screaming right into my ear. I could feel it in my chest. I dropped the phone and actually woke up, sitting up in bed, gasping, my heart pounding. There was no one there, just me, and the room was dark. I told myself it was a nightmare, just a weird, vivid dream. But after that night, my cat stopped sleeping next to me. She would still come into my room, but she wouldn't lie down near me anymore. Instead, she'd sit at the foot of the bed, stiff and tense, staring at the corner where I saw that thing in the reflection. Sometimes she'd growl, low and soft. Sometimes she'd hiss, but she never relaxed. I started feeling it too. That heaviness, that wrong feeling. It got to the point where I couldn't even be in my room alone. The air felt thick. I'd hear faint clicks from my closet, little creaks from behind my headboard. Once, I swear I saw something shift in the reflection of my turned-off TV. I began sleeping in my parents' room. At first, they thought I was being dramatic. Then one night, my mum found the cat crouched at the doorway of my room, fur puffed, eyes wide, just staring in. We moved out a few months later, but I still wonder what would have happened if I stayed in that room a little longer, or if I turned around that first night instead of just looking at the screen. I used to work nights as a janitor at a small K3 school. It was an old place, built in a square shape around an open atrium in the center. You could only get into the atrium through glass doors, and all the hallways wrapped around it. I was told the land might have been some kind of burial site, but no one ever confirmed it. I didn't think much of it. The first time I heard the footsteps, I thought maybe one of the staff stayed late. They came from the far side of the building, faint but clear, like someone walking slowly across tile. I called out. No answer. I checked each room down that hallway. Empty. Then I started noticing shadows. Faint outlines, like someone just out of reach, walking across the atrium on the opposite side. But when I'd rush around the hallway to catch whoever it was, there was never anyone there. Just silence. My keys would jingle in my pocket, echoing, but I never heard any other sound. The shadows always seemed to vanish before I got close. At first, it only happened once or twice a night, but then it was every half hour. I started hearing 2 sets of footsteps, sometimes 3. I'd chase them, turn corners fast, expecting a prank, or maybe a teacher staying late and messing with me. But nothing. The lights would flicker in certain rooms, even ones I'd already cleaned. I'd go back in, find a trash can knocked over or a chair turned around. Doors I'd closed were wide open again. I stopped using my headphones. I couldn't stand not hearing what was around me. One night I made sure I hit every room, double-checked everything before I left. Still heard the footsteps. Still saw the shapes moving in the atrium. I left around 2 a.m., completely exhausted. The next day, my supervisor called me, furious. Said I hadn't cleaned a single thing. Every room looked untouched, trash bins full, desks still messy. I quit before she could finish yelling. I drive by the place sometimes. Windows dark, playground empty. But I swear, even from the road, I can see movement inside, like someone's still walking the halls. When I was 6, I used to spend a lot of time in the living room, sitting in front of the TV. Right across the street from our house was this old abandoned place. No lights, no people, just a decaying house that everyone avoided. It had been empty for as long as I could remember. The windows were always dark, some cracked, some boarded up. But that night, something was different. I remember glancing out the window during a commercial break. Just a quick look, and I froze. There was a light on in the upstairs window across the street. Not normal light. It looked like candlelight, flickering, soft, orange. And behind it, in the window, I saw a figure. It was standing perfectly still, a tall woman, thin, wearing what looked like a white nightgown. Her hair was long and hanging down, and she wasn't moving at all, not waving, not blinking, just watching. I couldn't see her face, but I could feel it staring straight at me. Not the house. Me. I sat there staring back for what felt like a full minute. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I was completely locked in. Then the commercial ended and I snapped back to the room. I looked away. When I checked again, the window was dark. Years later, I found out the house was finally opened by the city. It had been sealed up for decades. Total hoarder's den. Piles of junk and trash everywhere. The floors were collapsing in parts. They said you couldn't even walk up the stairs because they were completely blocked by furniture and garbage, floor to ceiling. The room where I saw the figure, that was the upstairs bedroom. No one could have gotten in there. Not then. Not for years. But I know what I saw. There was light in that window. Someone or something was standing there, watching me. I never saw it again. But every time I walk past that house, I feel like it's still there, waiting. A few years ago, I was working a student job in the basement of my university's library. It was quiet down there, cold, dim, and mostly used for archives. Old journals, theses, boxed up donations no one had catalogued. I usually had the place to myself during the night shift, which I liked at first. One evening, around 9:30, I was alone, scanning barcodes for an inventory update. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, and I had my earbuds in, but I kept one out. I never felt fully comfortable down there. You always had this feeling like someone had just turned the corner or was standing at the far end of an aisle, just out of view. That night, I heard something fall, just a thump. I paused the scanner, took out my earbud, and waited. It wasn't unusual. Books slip sometimes, but then it happened again. A louder sound from a different shelf. I stepped out from between the aisles and looked around. The air felt still. I didn't hear footsteps, no doors opening or closing. Just silence. I walked over to the shelf where I thought the sound came from. A thick textbook was lying flat on the ground. Spine cracked. I picked it up, shoved it back in place. As I turned to head back, 2 more books fell, one after the other, maybe 2 feet behind me, not toppled, slid, like someone had pulled them out. I froze. Then I heard another thud, further back. I didn't move this time. I just stared down the row. One by one, books began slipping from the shelves. Not violently, just slow, steady falls, like invisible hands were pulling them out with care. The motion sensor lights down the last aisle flickered off, even though I'd just walked through there 10 minutes ago. Then the lights above me buzzed louder for a second, and one of them popped off. The far end of the room dimmed. I didn't check the cameras. I didn't clean up. I just dropped the scanner and walked out. Didn't even lock the door behind me. They asked me the next morning why I left early. I told them I got sick, but I've never gone back into that basement again, and sometimes I still dream about the sound of books sliding one by one. I've lived in the same house all my life. It sits right next to an old graveyard, and weird stuff has always happened here. I got used to it early on. Cold spots, whispers, stuff moving on its own. But the attic was the worst. I live up there now, but when I was younger, I'd avoid it. Things used to shift on their own. I'd hear creaks, low thuds, sometimes dragging noises, but no one else ever heard them. A few months ago, something happened that stuck with me. It wasn't the scariest thing that's ever happened here, but it felt different, more direct. It was around 3 a.m. when I suddenly woke up. I didn't hear anything, just opened my eyes, wide awake. My room was pitch black except for the little blinking light from my phone charger. I immediately felt it, the heaviness, that weird pressure, like someone's watching you from too close. That feeling isn't new. I've dealt with it since I was a kid. Usually I just whisper, "Go away," and the room lightens up. But this time was different. The air felt thick, like something was standing right at the edge of my bed. Not in the corner, not across the room. Right there, close. I didn't say anything. I just lay there. I couldn't see a shape, but I could feel it. My heart was beating so fast, but I didn't want to sit up. So I swung my arm upward, fast, like I was trying to brush something away from above me, and I hit something. It didn't feel like air. It wasn't like hitting the ceiling or the wall. It felt soft, but solid. It gave slightly under my arm like flesh, like fabric stretched over something tall. Then nothing. I sat up, turned on my phone flashlight, scanned the room. Nothing there. I just laid back down. I was too tired to care anymore. I've lived with this stuff forever, but now sometimes, when I wake up, I leave the light on, and my arm always feels cold. I lived in this old rental house during college. It had a strange energy, always too cold, always too quiet in the wrong places. You'd hear things like cabinets slamming when no one else was home. The basement gave off this awful vibe. No one liked going down there, not even during the day. One night, I went to bed early. A few of my friends were still downstairs, laughing and playing music, so the house felt somewhat alive. I was half asleep when I heard the doorknob turn. It wasn't loud, just a soft, deliberate click. I opened my eyes and looked toward the door. It was shut, still latched. I stared at it for a second, waited for someone to push it open, but nothing happened. I figured it was just my mind playing tricks. I shut my eyes again, then the floor creaked. Once, then again. The kind of creak you only get from old floorboards under real weight. And it was close, Not down the hall, not at the stairs, right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. The steps started, slow, heavy, one at a time, the sound of weight shifting on old wood, coming from the door and moving toward my bed. I was laying on my side, facing the wall, frozen. The footsteps came around the foot of the bed, then along the side, just inches from where I lay. I could feel the air shift beside me, like someone was standing there, watching. The music downstairs kept playing. I could still hear people talking and laughing like everything was fine. But in that moment, in my room, it felt like something had slipped in from somewhere else. It stopped right near my head. I could hear the faintest breath, ragged and low, not human, too wet sounding, like it had been holding its breath for too long. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just stared at the wall and waited. At some point, the sounds downstairs stopped. No more music, no more talking, just silence. The floor never creaked again. Whatever it was never walked away, and I never found out if it left. This happened when I was around 20. I was working a temp job, helping renovate this old government building. Place was massive. Tall ceilings, dozens of rooms, all stripped down to concrete and dust. No power in the building yet, so we had to work in the daylight and carry flashlights for anything deeper inside. It always felt too quiet. Not peaceful, just wrong. One afternoon, I was alone on the third floor, moving old doors and cabinets from one room to the next. The sun was starting to dip, and the light in the halls was going grey. I had my head down, hands full, walking past one of the long corridors. And I saw something in the edge of my vision, movement behind me. I turned quick. There was someone, or something, about 6 feet behind me. It looked like a person, but I couldn't make out any features. Just this tall, solid shadow, darker than the rest of the hallway. It was walking in step with me, but when I stopped, it didn't. It kept walking for another 2 steps, then vanished before my eyes. No fade out, no sound, just gone. I stood there frozen for what felt like a full minute. Nothing. No footsteps. No creaks. Just that thick, dead air pressing in. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light. Shadows through the dirty windows. Dust in my eyes. But it had shape. Weight. It walked like it was real. I didn't tell anyone that day. Just finished my shift and left fast, making sure to keep the back of my neck covered. A few days later, one of the other workers, a guy named Rick, asked if anyone else had seen someone walking around the top floor. He said he heard footsteps behind him in an empty room. When he turned around, there was no one, but his shadow was still cast on the wall, and there was a second one next to it. He said the second shadow didn't move when he did. We both got reassigned to a different floor the next week, but sometimes I still wonder if that thing followed one of us home. Came back from a week-long vacation. The house was dark and stale, like it had been holding its breath while I was gone. I dropped my bags in the hallway and went straight to my room to start unpacking. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt something off. Not just jet lag or the usual post-trip fatigue. It was this sudden, heavy pressure, like the room didn't want me there, like I was intruding. I brushed it off, opened my suitcase, started pulling out clothes. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. No hum from the fridge, no creaks from the old walls, just a dead quiet that made my ears ring. Then I heard it. From the next room, my guest room, I heard this low, wet, gurgling noise. It didn't sound human, not like anything that should be inside a house. It reminded me of something from a horror movie, but I couldn't place which one, like the sound a little girl might make if she were trying to talk while choking on something thick. No words, just that awful, rasping gargle, like a throat filled with tar. I froze. My hand was mid-air holding a shirt. The sound kept going for maybe 4 or 5 seconds, then stopped. I stood there, staring at the wall, waiting to hear it again. My heart was thudding so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. I don't know why, but I just yelled, "Get the fuck out!" My voice sounded too loud in the stillness, like it didn't belong in the space anymore. I didn't go check the other room. Couldn't move. I stayed in my room for hours, sitting on the bed, staring at the door. At some point I noticed my suitcase had been zipped back up. I didn't remember doing that. I haven't gone into the guest room yet. Every time I pass the door, it feels a little colder on that side of the hallway. Last night, I heard it again, but this time, it was right outside my bedroom door.